Alan Arkin recently passed away, unfortunately. Lived a long life, had a very successful career, and the thing that you and I remember the most from his career is Little Miss Sunshine.
Yes, I adore Little Miss Sunshine. It's one of my favorite movies.
Is it your favorite movie?
It's one of my favorite movies. I don't know if it's like my top favorite movie, but it does mean a lot to me, and I have a lot of fondness and nostalgia for it.
Would you consider it top 5?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really thought that deeply because I don't really care enough, to be honest, to organize it like that. But
no.
But if yeah.
I'm just podcasting here.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. But if I were to, probably it would be in the top 5. Yeah,
for sure. It is a movie I definitely appreciated more after I met you. Funny enough, I think I liked it, and I'd seen it one time, and it was one of those things where you talked about it a lot. You also went to screenwriting school, and they kind of taught you. They talked about this movie with you.
Like, our homework was to read the screenplay.
Yeah.
Ahead of time. And then we all watched it together, then had to break it down and study the script.
And so you had like more of a relationship to the movie than I did. And I was like, oh yeah, Little Miss Sunshine was good. Mm-hmm. And then I watched it again. Sure. And I was like knocked out. And then I saw it again very recently and I was knocked out. This is my 3rd watch of this movie.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I actually cried watching it.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, okay. I cried 2 times.
That movie, it gets you, right? That movie is like...
And I don't know what
deep.
I don't know what it was this time around.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's like it happened the 3rd watch for me. Maybe it's the fact that I'm getting older and you and I are treating Nice Dude as an actual like business and it's our job now. I'm thinking a lot more about just like the importance of doing something for yourself and what that means, winning and losing, and all those themes just hit harder.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's moments in this movie that really hit for me. There's 2 specific ones that I will talk about.
Sure.
Before we get into anything, can I do my synopsis?
Yes. For those who are new here, Altaf likes to do his little synopsis, and I get really excited to hear them because you get so into writing them. And, we've gotten some nice comments on the airplane one. I don't know if you've seen that. Some people were saying, like, Altaf, you'd actually be a great copywriter. There's some people that have said that. So
I wish I chose the right career.
Yeah, that's the path you're meant for.
That's the one that would have made me money. Being a copywriter for physical media. Yeah, that would have made me money.
You would have been writing those little 2-sentence little things for Netflix. He wanted to escort her. It was more than he bargained for.
Yeah, you know how like Netflix also categorizes every like slightly weird movie as irreverent?
Oh yeah, irreverent, that I know. I'm so sick of seeing irreverent in the lineup.
God.
Anyway, though, synopsis. What do we got?
A dysfunctional middle-class family hop in a yellow Volkswagen microbus and take a 7-year-old Olive Hoover to California in hopes of winning a beauty pageant. Only problem is that this family isn't destined to win anything. Why? Because they're losers. 6 losers who decide to travel 700 miles for Little Miss Sunshine.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Right?
Nicely done.
Thank you.
That's very accurate.
Yeah, we don't have to harp on it. I'm really proud of myself, yada, yada, yada.
You're like, I'm ready to move on. I'm ahead of you guys. I know I'm great.
This movie has such a great story engine, right?
It's super simple. It's a really simple story. And
it's like one of the things I love in movies, which is the road trip movie.
Yeah.
And when you have that, there's a few things in movies that like I think are always gonna work. Like a wedding movie and a road trip movie.
Wait, what's a wedding movie?
Movie centered around a wedding.
Yeah,
so,
okay, sure. For some reason, my brain just was like, I couldn't think of a
My
wedding
Best
movie.
Friend's Wedding, Father of the Bride.
Got it, of course. Wedding Crashers.
Wedding Crashers.
Yeah,
and then road trip movies. I think road trip movies always work.
They're pretty timeless.
This movie has that going for it, along with just a brilliant script.
Yeah, the script by Michael Arndt is just astounding. I understand fully why we were assigned to read that script as homework when I went to school.
Aside from like the script and everything, it's such a good movie and it's so well made that I'm kind of just surprised that people don't talk about it and don't consider it the way you and I do. Mm-hmm. And sure, Michael Arndt, who's the screenwriter of this movie, he won Best Original Screenplay. Mm-hmm. Abigail Breslin was nominated. Alan Arkin obviously won Best Supporting Actor. So, it was given its awards. It did fairly well in theaters. And it's not like this movie was just like this forgotten masterpiece. But, like, it's weird. Like, after it came out, it kind of was just like, oh yeah, that movie's great. And it's not considered what it is, which for me is one of the great movies in the past 2 decades.
That's the thing. Exactly. It's not looked at with the same fondness as I wish it would be.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's hard to say because there aren't like huge stars in it. Steve Carell's in it. I think he's probably now looked at as probably the biggest star in it.
Yeah, I would say Steve Carell, Paul Dano.
Yeah, Paul Dano, of course.
And Toni Collette are actually bigger than they were then.
Yeah, all of them grew a lot. I mean, Paul Dano is like, that was his first like big role, I would say.
Yeah, and so that's what makes it even for me. I feel like these type of movies are fun to rewatch just because you're like, oh man, Toni Collette, what a career she's had, you know?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a shame, but
honestly, that's what gets me excited about covering this movie for this podcast, because you and I were pretty dead set on, like, we want to hit the popular ones too. Like, we want to hit the Airplane or Raiders of the Lost Ark. But we also want to do movies like these where they're special to us.
Yeah, and this movie is really popular. Obviously it's not like some underground niche movie, but it's not as, like, in the long run as iconic as the others, is really what you were trying to say.
Where I see it talked about the most is film Twitter, Letterboxd, that type of community. Video essays, like, it's in montages,
Sure, yeah.
But when it comes to, like, general public, how we talk about Social Network, and I'm like, I think it should be in that same list because it's so well crafted.
Yeah, I heavily agree.
And I think it's put into that independent cinema category when it's so much more than that.
I have a lot of fondness for it from a nostalgic perspective too. I'm pretty sure this is the first R-rated movie I saw in theaters too.
Wow.
My family took me. And I remember this is like...
Mine was The Dictator.
I know, right?
Me and my friend snuck into The Dictator.
So to be clear, the reason why I'm saying I'm pretty sure is it was either Little Miss Sunshine or it was Resident Evil Extinction or something like that. Like the third Resident Evil movie. We just look up...
To be clear, we're talking about the first R-rated movie we saw in theaters, not first R-rated movie we saw.
Not in general, yeah, in theaters.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just to be clear.
So just to be clear, too, Dictator wasn't the first R-rated movie I ever saw. Anyways.
But I remember, though, this is kind of a mild side tangent. Bear with me. When I was a kid, I saw Ballad of Ricky Bobby in theaters.
Okay.
Did you see that movie in theaters?
No.
In the theater, they play the fucking trailer to The Grudge 2. Okay?
That's
to like
awesome.
to like a 9, 10 year. I don't know how old. I don't remember how old I was when it came out, but I was like elementary school age.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
The scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. So naturally, seeing an R-rated movie in theaters, I literally
traumatic.
During the trailer, there's no horror movies in the trailers, but I was so paranoid that there would be something. I kept saying I had to pee during the trailers, and my mom was trying to stop me from like leaving, but I kept trying to leave
because you were so scared.
I was so paranoid, so like a freaky trailer would come on, like these R-rated trailers, because it's an R-rated movie.
It's so funny hearing you say that, because that, like, you're the same, like, 13-year-old who read Clockwork Orange.
I know, right? It's funny how that played out.
Is it nostalgic for you in that sense, or did you like it a lot as a kid, too?
I did like it a lot as a kid. Obviously, it didn't make me cry or anything the way it would now. Obviously, it didn't have the same, like, real core philosophical heart, obviously. But
you probably just enjoyed it.
It was really funny.
Yeah.
It was really funny. It's still... The thing is, Little Miss Sunshine is an R-rated movie, but it's a pretty wholesome movie. Like, it's not that bad.
It is R-rated because it has to get a little dark at times. Mm-hmm. And also, a lot of the dialogue from Alan Arkin is just filthy.
Yes, I know. We'll get to Alan Arkin's performance momentarily.
Yeah.
I really want to get to that. I do remember this as well. At the end, when the final dance scene happens, my family was laughing so hard. Like my mom and my stepdad.
I can only imagine how that played in theaters.
Yeah, and my stepdad was like almost like on the verge of vomiting. He was laughing so hard. By the time they all got up and started dancing and Paul Dano was doing his stank face.
Yeah, his dance is really great.
So good.
The very first time I saw it, I think it was on Netflix.
Okay.
And I saw Steve Carell was in it. And I was just like binging The Office, so I was like, anything Steve Carell does is gold. And so I watched it, and I was like, Steve Carell, oh, wow. Like,
yeah, I know.
That was a big shocker for me, especially the way the title shows up on his miserable face.
Yeah, Little Miss Sunshine.
One of the great title reveals.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's amazing. It's such a... It tells you everything you need to know about the movie in just one shot.
Here's your brother who tried to commit suicide but failed. Dead Eyes, Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, I know, it's haunting. All of the characters have perfect introductions too.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, I mean, like the opening of
Olive's opening
Yeah.
is iconic. Like that image of the glasses and the reflection.
Yeah, reflecting on the TV and her mimicking the movement.
That's what I'm talking about when I see this movie show up in a lot of video essays. They love that image.
That's so true. I see that shot a lot.
It's that image and the family running behind the Volkswagen.
Yeah, I know. There's some really clever and iconic imagery. Ooh, my shirt just came unbuttoned.
A little scandalous.
Sorry, guys.
Chris has been trying to get the watch time up.
Yeah, definitely. That's what really people are watching this channel for. There's a lot of really clever imagery, or like, you know, things that we don't really think about. But yeah, it's like that Volkswagen, that striking yellow color on the bus that they're driving.
Yeah.
And again, them all pushing it, and the shot of the grandpa trying to pull her into the car.
It's the shot of, before that too, it's the shot of when you first see the Volkswagen. It's revealed as if it's the Mandalorian. Not Mandalorian, I meant DeLorean.
Oh, the DeLorean. I was like,
you didn't even catch that.
No, my brain was trying to find like Mandalorian. What scene are you talking about? For some reason, I still understood what you were saying.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like it's an iconic, like badass image.
Because it's the shot of the road and it comes into frame and it treats it like we know this bus. Like,
you know what's funny is like, when I saw in elementary school, I told a friend of mine, like a classmate, that oh yeah, I saw Little Miss Sunshine. This friend of mine thought that it was about kidnappers, and I was like, what kidnappers? No, it's about a family on a road trip. Oh, why was that little girl running over with this old man in an RV? I was like, oh no, that's not what the movie
and like the bus opening and taking her in. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god.
That's so funny. Oh my god. The dark spin on Little Miss Sunshine.
What Little Miss Sunshine's really about. It literally does feel like just a movie that anyone could have made in a weird way, you know?
Exactly.
Like you said, it was shot on location. Like it feels very authentic. Like everywhere in the setting feels very lived in. Like it doesn't feel like this sterile.
Oh my god!
You know, it doesn't have that that whatever you want to call it. Like a lot of comedies now.
The clean Netflix clean look.
Yeah,
it feels very sterile. It doesn't feel like it doesn't. There's no texture to it.
Exactly. There's a ton of texture in this movie, even in tiny details. Like we're reminded that this family is very middle class.
Okay, so that's something I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
is like how their house looks in the opening. It's like when they're in that dinner table and you see those wood panel walls.
Yeah.
Like it just like if you like me were raised in a middle class family, right? Like you were raised middle class or poor. You know that house.
Yeah. Yeah, where they just have like a little bottle of Sprite they pass around.
Yeah.
And like even the dinner they have is that bucket of chicken. You know what I mean? They're just kind of getting dinner over with. Then she gets out popsicles for dinner or for dessert, I mean.
The way the Toni Collette dresses too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way the mom dresses, it feels real. It feels like a mom dressing up and she doesn't have that much money and
her hair is like a little bit greasy.
It's too. So, oh my god.
You know what I mean? It's just very textured. It's very lived in.
She's always exhausted. Like she always looks so exhausted.
I know.
It's really great stuff, and it feels very genuine. Even the way like they get like that cheap motel with 3 rooms in it. You know what I mean? It's just like, I know what it was like traveling with my family. I know what it was like to be like, how are we going to afford a motel? Renting a car? What does that look like?
Exactly.
Like thinking about all those things, you know?
Yeah, well, even when they go out to the diner, how Olive asked, like, you know, hey, what foods can I eat? And so, anything under $5.
$4.
Or $4, yeah, $4.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but, you know, the fact that, like, you know, it's such a good, like, like a screenwriter would be mindful of that's connected with that sort of family.
Yes.
You know, that understands that and empathizes with that.
It's the tiniest details are everything.
Totally.
Especially in a movie like this, because the real miracle of this movie is I believe that they're a family.
Yeah, I mean, right in the opening, as soon as they all start kind of walking around the house, talking to each other.
The dinner table scene is very important, I think, to really set the stage. Like what
exactly.
You're saying.
Yeah, the dynamics are there. Like the way she walks over and calls out for Dwayne to come down, and then Grandpa and Olive are practicing in the other room.
Yeah,
and the dad's like trying to get a hold of Larry, not Larry Sugarman. That's the other guy.
Stan Grossman.
Stan Grossman. Yeah.
Yeah, it sets up the dynamic, but even when they're sitting down, I'm talking about is like the way they're all talking to each other, and Alan Arkin coming in and just being like, the chicken!
Immediately he dominates and changes the scene. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going one way. The minute he comes in and opens his mouth, he's like, God damn, again with the fucking chicken. God almighty, or whatever he says.
You know, here's the thing about Alan Arkin is that in the 70s, he was like a, I haven't watched a lot of his 70s movies, but in the 70s, 80s, he was like this he was a movie star, right?
Yeah.
But then he like switched over to becoming like a character actor. And so he did a lot of these bit parts that he became really known for. Like one that I saw him in recently, I watched it for the first time recently, was Glenn Ross.
Okay.
And it's just like he started doing these type of characters more that were
like caricatures that have distinct voices and features.
Yeah, just character actor stuff. You know what I mean? And so this is just perfect, like right up his alley.
Yeah. Him with his like black vest, and I mean in the opening we see him snorting heroin.
Yeah,
right in the opening. You know,
I know it's pretty like shocking, and especially the way it's juxtaposed with the music, which sounds like whimsical.
Yeah, it has this kind of. Yeah, whimsical. I don't know how to describe it, but I love the music to it, though. The opening music.
That's what I'm saying. Especially when it like cuts to them on the road.
Yeah.
It feels so big, which is what I love about it. It could be like they could have easily made it this like intimate story, but these characters, the stuff that they're going through, feels really big because when you're in that family in that type of situation, especially when you're middle class, all problems feel like huge problems.
Sure.
So that that's what I really appreciate about it. But going back to that dinner scene, like what do you want to talk about? Like where do we start here? Do you want to talk about how we haven't spoken about Greg Kinnear at all?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And his character.
I was gonna say his character has such a cool arc. Throughout the whole thing, because in the opening scene, you fucking hate him. Like literally, it takes less than 5 minutes, and I love that they use the character of Frank, Steve Carell's character.
He's the audience surrogate.
He's the audience surrogate, and he's like kind of the normal one.
Yes.
Whatever. Ironically, and his character is like just released from a hospital. But
well, because his character is a bit more subdued, and he because of what he went through.
Yeah.
It allows him to be the audience.
Exactly, he's like newer to this family and how they work, and so. There's literally 3 different little close-ups of Steve Carell throughout their exchange of him glaring at Greg Kinnear.
It's my favorite thing.
Such good editing choices.
Like stuff like when Olive very innocently asked like, "What's wrong with your hand?"
Yeah.
And he said, and he starts telling her, like that he tried to kill himself and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And like the fact that Richard just immediately like, it's a disease, don't listen to it.
Yeah, he's a sick man. He's a sick man, Olive.
And then like Frank just like,
yeah, I know. Well, that's what's
or the way he looks at Dwayne and he's just like, is he always like this? And Dwayne's like, it's like, how do you do it?
I know.
Yeah, he is. It's such an impressive performance, and I don't think it's talked about enough because it's like Abigail Breslin and Alan Arkin are kind of like the performance that after you walk out the theater, you're like, oh my god.
They stole the show for sure, but everyone is so good.
But what I like about Greg Kinnear's performance is that it's so, for an actor to pull off being such a dick, but you still kind of root for him. Yeah. And it's the way the character's written for sure, but it's the way he also plays it where there's scenes where you're just like, dude, I'm going to knock you out. And then there's also scenes where you're like, this guy just needs a hug from his dad.
Yeah, and he's just afraid of failure. That's really, really what the core of it is. He's just afraid of failure, and that's not a wrong feeling to have.
No.
He goes about it in stupid ways and clearly projects his insecurities.
But it's very human.
But it's very human. Like, we're all very afraid of failure.
The thing I was thinking about a lot is that the stuff that he does, the whole 9-step program, writing a book to motivate others, when he doesn't even have his own life together, and giving these sermons, right, of just like, oh, that's not what winners do, that's what losers do. A lot of the stuff that Richard does in this movie, which giving these sermons, the 9-step program, selling a book, where he's a loser too, he just can't accept it, but he needs to do this to give himself that push, right? That's what people do on Instagram and social media all the time nowadays.
That's what a lot of the culture is based around. You know what I'm saying? Is like the never stop and like, the whole like
the hustle culture,
all the hustle culture, manifesting things and believing like if you just want it hard enough, you're gonna get it. And this movie makes a point to say like some things are out of your control. And you're gonna suffer, and you're gonna fail, and that's okay.
What's the text that I sent you? What's like I sent you a text earlier today.
I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah, it was a quote that Richard says at the dinner table.
Yeah.
When
it was when Frank tells Olive good luck because she was entering the pageant.
And when what did I text you?
And you texted me, oh yeah, luck is the name losers give to their own failings.
God, and it's like I remember I adding to that. I said, I'm like, that dude, that's some shit like Logan Paul would say now. Like it's
Yeah, I know this movie. Well, I mean, have you heard of like what the kind of seed was that got Michael Arndt to write this movie?
I do, but you should still say it.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, he was reading the newspaper and he saw Arnold Schwarzenegger give a speech to high schoolers, and he says, "If there's one thing I hate in this world, it's losers. I despise them."
Yeah.
And so he basically wanted to, it basically set something up for him because he so strongly disagreed with it, where he was like, no, life is so not that simple. Like, we have our failings and our successes. It's so much more complicated than that. It's like, oh, just, you have to win all the time. It's just not sustainable or realistic to have a happy life.
Yeah.
And so he thought basically like, the idea of a child beauty pageant was something that's so meaningless and ridiculous of a way to like judge people and decide your worth, especially children.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That it's so outside of connection of what, life is about.
And it's so true. Like I'm glad we're past that phase of like internet life. I feel like people are way more aware of the like toxicity behind hustle culture.
Yeah.
But it's still there of just luck doesn't exist. You got to make your own luck. And I'm like, no, the people who are saying luck doesn't exist, they're pretty privileged, and they have to realize that they were born into a situation. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, it's usually that type of
And you have to make the best of what you have, but there's stuff in life you just can't control.
Yeah.
Which is like a great idea to like attach a movie to. It's so painful to see Richard talk to Olive
in the very beginning when he says like, if you want it bad enough, you're gonna get it, kind of thing.
And so do you want it?
Or he says there's no point in entering a contest if you don't think you're gonna win.
It's so tough.
It's so harmful to tell a child.
So do you think you're gonna win it?
Yeah.
Or whatever. But
like there's nothing wrong with telling a child that like hard work is important in teaching. Like, what I mean? Just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with trying to motivate your kid and teach them the value of like putting yourself out there and competing. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how sports and all those things.
It's putting this type of pressure on a child that because you lost because you didn't put in the work.
Exactly. That's exactly where the line's drawn.
So basically, Olive gets the call that there's an option for her to go to Little Miss Sunshine, which just kicks off the story, right? Yeah. And then we're in that bus. And we're just off. Like I said, with the car gets this like movie star entrance. It's like
it is a great way to summarize it. It does get a movie star entrance. I will say though, like another detail that I love leading up to that part is when they had to convince Dwayne to go on the trip, because he wanted to stay and didn't want to, because it's a fucking road trip. No teenager wants to be on a road trip like that for something they don't care about.
Yeah,
But I love that it was kind of Olive that kind of convinced him to do it. I mean, obviously she says, I'll let you go to flight school, but also it's like, do this for your little sister. Because Olive is kind of the one thing that Dwayne doesn't dislike. That's like clearly his biggest weakness throughout the whole movie.
Oh, I know. And it happens a few times.
Yeah.
It happens a few times where like you see the connection that they have, and it's just like, you're the one person that I don't hate in this family. And also Frank, I love how quickly Frank and Dwayne get along.
Oh yeah, no, I can literally watch a whole movie with just those two.
Yeah, it's like early on, he's just like, please don't kill yourself tonight.
And he's like, I'm not gonna do that to you, Dwayne.
Yeah, not on your watch, buddy.
Well, even when Frank asks him to, he's like, so you can talk, you just choose not to, and he shakes his head. And he points at the portrait of Friedrich Nietzsche, and he's like,
so you're not talking because of Friedrich Nietzsche. And he's like, and then he walks away, he's like, right on.
He's like, far out, yeah.
Far out, yeah. That's what it was, yes. But yeah, I love how quickly they get along, and you it doesn't even have to be explained. You understand why they would get along.
Exactly, yeah. They both have kind of a different outlook on the world than the rest of the family.
Yeah.
For sure.
And they Dwayne is just like, this is hell where I'm in it. And Frank is like, wow, this is really it? What the hell are we doing? And so Dwayne's kind of like his come along for the ride, buddy. This is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, you're welcome to hell.
Yeah. The conversations in the car are just like some of the most fun movie scenes ever. Like the Alan Arkin just being like, fuck a lot of women, Dwayne. Oh, yeah.
I know, and Abigail Breslin really had headphones and couldn't hear what they were saying during the scene. She didn't know what they were talking about until she watched the movie.
His first line in the car is, Dwayne, that's your name, right? Dwayne? I'm like, you lived with him for
your
years.
Grandson.
You're living with the guy. Like, what do you mean? You're acting like you met him for the first time.
Well, I know. Well, I learned this too. This is like a small side note. Toni Collette says Dwayne was with his dad in Florida, and when she was listing stuff off, I'm like, people wonder whether or not Dwayne is actually Greg Kinnear's son, if he's a stepdad. You know, because they're saying like, like Olive was at this pageant, Dwayne's with his dad in Florida, and this and that. Yeah. And so you're like, oh shoot, okay. So I don't know fully, because some people have said like that could just mean Greg Kinnear was in Florida and they both went together.
And I also know that there are some like deleted scenes in this movie, and I wonder if there was a scene that explained that further, but they took it out.
Yeah, there could be a little something in there, but it's just something to know, because he does clearly look nothing like his family. Yeah. I mean, his hair has probably dyed, so I'm not talking about the black hair, but just even his whole stature and vibe. That's why he's such an outsider.
But through when you're in that. Oh, yeah, okay. Before we move on, let's talk about the way Dwayne looks.
God damn it! Yeah, I know we had to approach this at some point. You should just say okay. It. So when we watched this movie in class, that the reason why you know the story already, Altaf, but for people who don't know,
yeah, that's why I'm telling you to share it. Yeah.
So when we watched this movie in class, they're doing the intros, they're showing the Olive over the TV, and Greg Kinnear doing his thing. Right when it cuts to Paul Dano lifting his, doing his barbell, we suddenly hear a classmate go, "There's Chris," and the whole classroom dies laughing immediately.
It's the shaggy hair, shaggy black hair. It's the white shirt.
The lack of jawline.
If you knew Chris early on, like especially early on in our friendship, even like early 20s, Chris,
yeah.
You like. I feel like you looked a lot more like that, but not even.
I was a lot lankier. Let's not beat around the bush. I was a lot skinnier at that point.
I guess I was more talking about like the white. You wore like the white shirt a lot.
Sure, and skinny jeans. And
I knew that like your look then.
Sure.
And then also like you showed me pictures of you younger, of like you had much longer hair, but it's just really funny. You're nothing like Dwayne, but it's really funny. But in the car we get to learn a little bit more about the grandpa of just like. Okay, this guy is basically like, he's a war vet. He doesn't give a fuck anymore. Like, one of the lines is just like, I still got Nazi bullets in my ass. I still got Nazi bullets in my ass. When you get old, you're like, and then he talks about drugs, and he's like, when you get old, you're crazy not to do it. He tells Dwayne, like, don't do it right now. It's too crazy for you to do it when you're young. Yeah. But you understand, you're like, okay, this guy is just like, he has an old man's clarity. Like an old man's mental clarity.
Exactly. He's so confidently himself and unapologetic and everything.
But here's the thing, and I wanted to bring this forward. Mm-hmm. This time around, when I was watching this movie, whenever you watch this movie, it's really easy to see. It's like, okay, this grandpa doesn't give a fuck, and, by the end of the movie, everyone's going to take a little lesson from his book, right? But when I look at it now, I look at his life as a cautionary tale, because... It took him becoming an older man to have that mental clarity, and now he's like, all right, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna do drugs and just let's ride this one out. Mm-hmm. And I look at that movie now, and as I'm getting older, it kind of just reminds me of like, don't wait until your old age to realize that there's more important things in life. You know what I mean?
But to be fair, that happens a lot. People who are older have a lot more of a wisdom about them and an understanding of the world because of their experience.
But it's also good to like take things from that when you're younger and just be like, I should try to work towards that now too.
Oh yeah.
And I shouldn't just have that when I'm like in my 70s or my late 60s or whatever. I should try to do that now, because that guy was probably closer to Richard when he was younger.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah. He's the father. He's the father of his son.
And that's what I think about. I'm like, I bet that guy wasn't always like he is now. He probably was a little bit more of a tight ass when he was younger.
Yeah. What's funny is like, you haven't seen this movie, and so I won't spoil it for you or potential audience members who haven't seen it. But if you enjoyed those types of themes, you should watch Harold and Maude.
I need to watch Harold.
Harold and Maude's an awesome movie. Yeah. I really love that movie. I won't give anything away about it for sure, but there are a lot of themes involving that of like, it's never too late to start embracing life and realizing you don't have to give a fuck,
Yeah. Damn, yeah, I know you've recommended that movie to me a lot. It's been in a lot of lists. I really need to check it out.
It's a great one. I'd love to watch it with you sometime.
All the Alan Arkin stuff is so great. All the lines coming from him are so funny, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, well, do you remember the scene later in the movie after Greg Kinnear has his failed call with I always forget his Stan Grossman.
Yes.
You know, after he doesn't get the deal anymore.
Oh my God, the way he's sitting in the car.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I wrote down his line too. He says like, Richard, whatever happens, you tried to do something on your own, which is more than most people ever do. I include myself in that category. You took a big chance. It took guts, and I'm proud of you.
That was when I said I cried 2 times.
Yeah,
that was the first.
That was one of them.
Yeah. I don't know, it got me so hard because I think that's what I mean. Like I think it got me because you and I have recently made this our full-time jobs, and knowing how hard it is to do something like this, you know, and make it not this specifically, but just like, you know, starting your own business and doing something on your own. And it's like you're moving a boulder up a hill.
Yeah,
and. You know, for his dad to just say that to him and just like, whatever happens, you're still trying.
And that's the entire movie summarized, right? You know what I'm saying?
And Richard doesn't really understand that until those last 30 minutes.
Yeah, and you know what I love too is Richard's response, how he's kind of snarky about it at first. How he's like, thanks, Dad. And then he pauses and then he actually holds his hand and is like, thank you, Dad. You know?
Yeah, it's when the dad actually puts his hand on Richard's shoulder.
Exactly.
It's just like, oh, he's still a little kid.
yeah, exactly. I think like, you know, he realizes like, okay, I do actually really appreciate that support. You know, I needed that.
It kind of reminded me recently of when we watched Friday, and how at the end of Friday, I was telling you, I was just like, I like how this dad was really goofy, but at the end of the day, he was still a dad.
Yeah.
Where he's like, all right, put your hands up, son. These are the real weapons. You don't need a gun, right?
Yeah.
And in this movie too, like Alan Arkin, he has all the funny lines. We're all laughing. He shoots up heroin and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he sees his son struggling, and he's like, oh man, he didn't get it. That sucks. Okay. And then he comforts his son.
Yeah. And he does the same for
he's still
Olive,
a dad
too.
Oh,
he's a grandpa. You know, he's a great grandpa. The
scenes he has with Olive are just like amazing.
Yeah.
I talk about like if you could see a whole movie, I could just see a whole movie with just those two.
Oh, dude, I would watch that movie 10 times.
But yeah, that scene really affected me this time around.
That's cool. I like that.
It's also, you know, speaking on the car, I've mentioned it a lot, but I think we should talk about it. It's such a perfect movie car.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Michael Arndt wrote it with that in mind because he had experiences with that Volkswagen before.
Okay, cool.
But he also knew, like, from a production perspective, that it has such a good 360 view of stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they shot it with, like, 5 different Volkswagens.
To get different angles.
They, like, modified each one with different rigs and different, like, I think there were, like, 2 of them that were stationary, that weren't mobile, that they shot on, like, a trailer.
Greg Kinnear was driving, too.
Yeah, and he actually drove, yeah, and he jokes saying, like, this is, like, one of the most dangerous shoots I've done because they just put a camera right in front of him. You're like, okay, go. And he's driving, like, 50 miles an hour.
And he has to, like, look. Because there's a lens right in front of him.
While trying to act out a scene.
But the car goes on its own journey. I mean, I don't want to say it, but you gotta say it. The car is a character.
Yeah, I knew it. I mean, it is.
That's
true.
like a bingo card for movie podcasters. The music is another character.
Yeah, the setting's a character.
New York is a character.
But it's so true with this one, though. The car gradually falls apart with all these different issues. It's very like National Lampoon's Vacation.
Dude,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
literally, I have in my notes, feels like Vacation.
Yeah, exactly, with the new little problems that they deal with over the course of the movie.
So, speaking on that, the iconic shot of them all like having to push the car and then run into it with the music playing, it's a great movie moment. Mm-hmm. It's also like a screenwriter's wet dream because it's just like, what's the perfect metaphor?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I nailed that.
What's a perfect metaphor that is thematically relevant, dramatically like engaging, and it's tense, and it's funny.
Yeah.
It's really funny. It does all those 3 things. I mean, like, for a screenwriter, that's just like, God damn it. I'm pouring myself a glass of whiskey. I came up with that. That's pretty good. It's visual.
I know.
Let's put it on the poster.
I know. That is the most iconic image and is most likely the thumbnail of this video right now.
Of course, yeah. I mean, what else would you... Like, when you think of Little Miss Sunshine, you think of that van, you think of the family running to it. But it's like them when they do that for the first time. For like the very first time, it's the first time they're like working together and they're actually kind of having a good time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they have laughs over it, and like
only person who's not laughing is Richard, which is apt, but like
but you know, Frank saying, "Did you guys know I'm the second proudest Proust scholar?" Whatever he says, like
yeah. it's also kind of nice to see like Toni Collette, Steve Carell play off of each other as a good brother and sister relationship.
Yeah.
I always like seeing like brother sister or just sibling relationships in movies and how they're like portrayed, because I feel like that's a hard thing to nail.
It is hard to get right, but when you see it done right, you're like, oh shit, that's it. I think Parasite's a great example of that.
Yeah, well, Parasite's another movie where I'm just like, this family's a family, right?
They're family. I'm like, no. That's actually the father of those two. Like, that's what I think when I watch it.
Yeah.
Like, those aren't actors. That's a real family.
But that proves it's so hard to pull off. I mean, speaking of Friday, I say the same thing about Friday.
Yeah.
When I see the family early on in that movie, I'm like, damn, they feel like mom, dad, brother, sister.
Yeah, dude. It's always good when movies can achieve that, for sure.
100%. And movie does a really good job in like whenever they do their rest stops, like having each character have something to do, have some sort of business to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It felt like the writer took care of every character.
You know what's funny is I wrote that too. I put like characters are always in character. I wrote
like the first rest stop where Paul Dano's doing push-ups, and Olive is rehearsing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the scene obviously where Frank runs into his ex while buying porno. And but all characters are very active, you know.
Yeah, well, and, you know, and Olive, like, I think when they're at the mechanic too, Olive's like rolling the tire, just being a kid, and just, you know,
it's such a good kid moment of just like,
well,
and then just kind of like saying the grandpa just sitting in this.
Yeah, exactly. Olive in general is such a well conveyed child, as weird as that sounds.
Oh my god,
is that like, you know, every moment, even down to like in the opening when they're having the dinner discussion, how she's so curious all the time, the dinner and at the diner.
The response, the diner. I mean, you and I could talk about the diner,
but she's always like, you know, like what's going on? Why is everyone upset?
What's happening?
She like kids do that shit all the time.
Oh my god! If you've been around kids, if you have family, like if you have younger siblings or cousins or whatever,
or kids of your own,
you can just or kids of your own, you know that. But her response to Frank saying boyfriend, like, or when she asked like boyfriend, like,
it was a boy, yeah,
it's a boy. And then she just responds by like, "That's silly."
And he's like, "Yes, it was silly.
It was silly.
It's so sad."
It's a great like back and forth with them.
Yeah.
And you know, speaking of like Olive, the diner scene is just, it breaks my heart the way he talks to her.
The ice cream scene. Yeah. It's revolting. I literally said,
it's just like, you know what happens? You get fat. It's the way he says it too. I was like, I don't know.
So patronizing, and it's nasty. And like when we were watching it in class, as soon as he said like, and if you don't, you might stay nice and skinny, I literally said out loud, "You piece of shit!" Like in my class, I just said that full volume.
It's similar to what Frank says when everyone starts like being shocked and like walking away when Olive starts dancing. Doesn't Frank say something like that? It's like, I'm gonna kill these people.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's so great because you're like, you feel so immersed in the story. You like feel for Olive. You want to punch Richard in the face. Yeah. And also, but I mean, just Alan Arkin, Paul Dano, Steve Carell just being together, just being like, "Oh, we'll take your ice cream. This tastes good, right?"
Yeah, the way they all get him back.
Oh, God. And she's just like, "Wait, don't eat it all." And then when it cuts to, like, Greg Kinnear, you almost want to be like, "Yeah, fuck you."
Yeah. Well, then remember Dwayne, like, shoots the little straw paper at him, too?
Yeah.
At the end of the scene.
It's such a good punchline. Do you want to talk about that hotel sequence? Like, where between Olive and Grandpa?
Yeah.
That's the second time I cried. It was a type of cry where I had to pause it and kind of just like drink some water. It was like, it was hard.
Yeah, which part in particular was it that like triggered the tears? Was
it
like
to set the table for the scene? Yeah. It's the scene where she basically asks him like, do you think I'm pretty? Mm-hmm. Right? And he responds with the perfect response. He's like, "Yes, you're pretty. And I'm not just talking about your brains or personality. You're pretty inside and out."
Oh, yeah. He literally says, like, "Olive, you're the most beautiful girl in the world." You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He walks away. Mm-hmm. And then she stops him. And then I wrote it down. What does she say to him?
Well, she says, like, "I don't want to be a loser."
I don't want to be a loser. Okay, yeah, when she says I don't want to be a loser, it's the way her, like, Abigail Breslin is, like, her lips are quiver. She cries like a kid. Like,
totally.
It's not acting. It's like, I see her, and I'm like, man, I fucking have seen that. And just the fear.
We've been that at one point, too.
I'm just like, it's so traumatic for a child to feel that they're not pretty or they're a loser.
Yeah, or they're not good enough for their parents. Because she said like, Daddy hates losers.
Because it's heartbreaking because it's the way she dresses is so great. It's like the way she wears the headband and cowboy boots.
Her big old glasses.
She dresses like a kid.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that like her dad speaks to her in a way that doesn't make her feel confident in herself when she is confident in herself.
Yeah.
She is, but it's like some outside forces are taking that away from her.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's heartbreaking to see it. And it just fucking like broke me.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing performance.
It really is.
She's so good in this movie.
And it's so touching, his response too. You know, the way he was just saying, like, you know what a loser is? A loser is someone who's so afraid to try, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
And you're trying, right? And she's like, yeah. He's like, then you're not a loser, you know? And then he's like, you know, if we can tell them all to go to hell, he says, like, it's like, who cares, you know?
And then, like, it's the way she does her, like, okay.
Yeah, takes her glasses off.
Like, oh my God.
I know, dude. I know.
Yeah, it's fucking...
But that's what this whole movie does. Like, literally every character, you know, and you know what's funny is, like, we didn't even talk about this, but we've done a video on Little Miss Sunshine a while ago. Like, probably like 3 years ago, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
At least, or 2-3 years ago. And
it was like a 20-minute review.
Exactly. And so what was it though? We talked about it in that video too, but you know, we can talk about it again now, is that like every character is such a colossal failure. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But it's somehow you're so down for the ride. Like no one really succeeds the entire movie.
Well, that's a point. That's the statement the movie's trying to make.
Exactly. But even down to, you know, Olive's kind of like the main kind of push for the whole story engine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But
it's to be honest, I mean, I know I said like the studio wanted it to surround like Richard, but and Michael Arndt disagreed, and yeah, it's true, it's the family story, but it is kind of Richard's story. It is like, it's very much about him learning to accept it, because the entire family slowly accepts the fact that they're losers. I mean, Dwayne is the one that's just like, I just need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, I need to get out of here.
He literally wants to be a pilot and fly away.
But slowly the entire family just accepts the situation that they're in and learn to make the best out of it. And Richard's the last one standing.
And it has the greatest scene, which we'll get to, I know. We'll get to it, but I'm just excited to.
It literally takes his dad dying for him to just be like, we can't be like this. You know what I mean? There has to be something more. You know, I can't deal with this shit anymore. Like him breaking a little bit. It's like the first time he breaks, because he wants to sort of show this facade, right?
Yeah.
Of like, I'm a winner. Winners don't give up. But Bryan Cranston shows up and just tells him what's what.
Yeah.
As Stan Grossman. He's
like rejecting his call right in front of him too.
Right in front of him, but then tells him it's like, it's you. No one cares about you.
Yeah.
You know? It's
personal, basically.
Yeah. And then his dad dies. And at first I love how Greg Kinnear is, where he's just like, he's still trying to keep shit together. He's like, thank you. What do we have to do? Whatever. Like, we still have to make it at 3. Yeah. But it's when he comes in the room and he just breaks it. It's like, damn you, Dad. Like, come on.
Yeah, why'd you have to do this now while this is happening?
But it's in the hospital when he sees his dad's dead body where he just breaks the facade and he's like, damn it.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on with my life?
Yeah. And then he basically goes full Clark Griswold and wraps up his dad's corpse and stuffs it in their car.
You know, after finally seeing, like, Vacation, did we see it this year? Did we watch it this year?
We saw it in, like, November of last year.
Okay, so it was last year.
Yeah.
After seeing that movie, I now think, I'm like, I wonder how much Michael Arndt took from, like, Clark Griswold.
Oh, sure, yeah. I think he was like, what's the emotional core of Vacation? And how can I, like, make it
How can
deeper
I make it more grounded?
and philosophical and existential?
Vacation and Little Miss Sunshine. What a great double feature
That's a pairing, yeah, exactly.
I would love to do Little Miss Sunshine and then afterwards Vacation as, like, a dessert.
Yeah. That's a great point.
What happened if, like, Clark Griswold just went insane? What happened if, like, Richard went crazy? But yeah, no, okay. So talking about that, he decides to take the dead body because he was just like, if Grandpa would want to see this, Dad would want to see Olive's, like, thing.
He would want to see this through, basically.
Yes, yes. And the family's like, what?
Yeah, I know. Well, and it's funny. This is kind of a small side note, but like I forget the grandpa's only in it for like an hour of the movie. Like he's only in like half.
Alan
or something
Arkin, man,
like
he
that.
just makes such an impression.
He just dominates that movie, but he's not in it for that as much as you think he would be.
Before we get into the fucking con job that they pull off, but Linda, the actress who plays Linda,
I know exactly what you're gonna bring up.
What is she from?
Barry.
What?
You didn't know what she was from? Did you think
Moss?
Yeah, she was Moss.
Okay,
Detective Moss.
I was watching it and I was like, what is she from? What is she from? And I like forgot to look it up.
Oh, that's so funny. I thought you wrote it down and were about to say it. So I'm like, oh, and Barry.
Yeah. Chris and I were huge fans of Barry.
Yeah.
And she was amazing in season 1. And she's just amazing.
Yeah.
No spoilers.
Yeah, I know, right? Were you about to spoil it for a second?
Yeah. But she's like really funny in this movie because like of how much of like this is my everyday job. Don't fuck with me right now.
Exactly.
Sign the papers. Let's move on.
Yeah, I know.
The little tiny performance moment that she had, which is where like she opens the curtain for all of them to go into the room and she waits, and then the way she closes the curtain is she's so annoyed. Like if you watch it, she's just like.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The way she comes in to greet Richard and the family, and she's like, hi. Like a little smile. Her performance is overshadowed by what happens next, which is they steal a freaking body.
Yeah, they literally like run it out the window. It's one of the wildest things I've seen in a movie like this.
Michael Arndt even said, he was like, that's a part of the movie of just like, if you're out there, then you're basically out. As an audience member.
Sure. Out as in like if you lose an audience member's interest, then the whole movie doesn't work kind of thing.
As in like you don't buy it.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's if you're like, oh, okay, that's too much.
Yeah.
That feels very National Lampoon, you know?
Sure.
Then you don't. But I think you're so engaged with this family and their dynamics, and you really want Olive to go to that Little Miss Sunshine thing, that you're just like, okay, yeah, steal that body, throw it through the window, let's go.
After everything they've been through, you're like, yeah, get them out there, get to this thing.
And it's also the one time it's like the first time in the movie where Richard doesn't come out to be an asshole.
Yeah.
Funny
in a weird
enough.
way, when you're, hiding a corpse is like Richard's most heroic moment.
It's just most like, it feels like it's not his most human moment in the movie, because I feel like he has a lot of human moments when he's taking those phone calls and he's getting defeated. Yeah. But it feels like, okay, he's getting closer to becoming a little bit more well-rounded and letting go of that facade of just, I need to be the 9-step program guy.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, even leading up to it, too. Like, when they're in the waiting room, remember how Tony Collette's like, okay, family meeting. We need to,
And he's away. He doesn't respond when she's talking to their children about death.
Yeah, and she says, like, okay, if God decides he wants to take him, just know that, we all need to be prepared, and I love you guys more than anything. And she starts crying. And then Dwayne writes down a little note for Olive, like, go hug mom. That was the most older brother thing I've seen.
Such a good older brother moment. Like just him knowing too is just like Olive's hug will make her feel better.
Yeah, because Dwayne knows, which we'll get to.
It's truly such a great shot too, when it's that like dolly shot following the family rushing to the car. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's a little handheld
in the parking lot or whatever.
Yeah, the movie has a lot of shots like that where it feels so there's a speed to it. Where like there'll be these sweeping shots of the car on the road and the camera's catching up with the car.
Yeah, so frenetic.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And I'm like, oh man, they didn't have to get that shot, but they did.
They went for it. I know.
But yeah, that move, Michael Arndt said, it was like, yeah, that was like a very scary thing to put onto screen because we didn't know how the audience was going to receive it.
Yeah, they didn't know if that would be too far or too weird.
And it's not something they can just easily cut out too.
Yeah, it's very integral to the story, yeah.
Yeah. Am I skipping around too much, or is it this like, because I was about to get to the beauty pageant, but then we have like one very important scene.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about when Dean Norris pulls them over.
Yeah. No, not Dwayne talking for the first time. Yeah. Dean Norris will go. Because, okay, Dean Norris, one of our great movie on-screen cops of all time. He's now shown up for us. He's like, we saw Total Recall and we were like, Dean Norris. We saw Starship Troopers, Dean Norris. You and I love Breaking Bad.
Yeah, of course.
And seeing him in this is so funny.
He's so fucking funny in this movie, dude.
Oddly,
the one small scene he has, he is so funny. I can literally watch that scene again and it always makes me laugh.
I'm a big fan of the Rewatchables podcast.
Okay.
And they've talked about doing Little Miss Sunshine, and in their podcast they have a category called like most rewatchable scene. And if that's not in there, I'll be upset because I watch that scene on YouTube all the time.
But the best part of that whole sequence, okay, so when he's about to go and pseudo discover the corpse in the trunk, and he opens it, and
Richard's just the worst. He says the worst things.
He's like, "Don't open it. It's not illegal."
Like, shut the fuck up.
So when the dirty mags fall out. When like he hears like he's like, "Oh God bless you," or whatever he says,
and then Greg Kinnear's like, sweetness.
Well, before that, when Richard turns over to see him, he's like standing there with this kind of shit-eating grin. Like, remember that like grin that he has when he's holding the magazine? He's
and
like, oh.
And then there's that shot inside the car looking out where you just see like, all right, so a little bit on the side.
Yeah, oh, I love this stuff, man. Oh, don't worry, I'm not gonna bust you.
So what's the idea now? Question.
Yeah.
Because love that scene. However, is the idea that he doesn't notice the dead body?
Well, he doesn't notice the dead body. He assumes that Greg Kinnear was hiding the dirty magazines.
Right.
When he says, "Don't look in there. It's not illegal."
So that is the one like very. Oddly enough, them stealing a body from the hospital and getting in the car without getting caught, I was like on board for.
Yeah.
But when he opens a trunk and doesn't notice a human-shaped like cloth thing that's clearly a body,
with a blanket over it or whatever.
This time around, I was like, I kind of don't buy that.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
It's funny as hell.
I was gonna say like I was willing to go with it because it's obviously like a comedic like stupid cop scene.
It's yeah, and I wouldn't have it any other way because again, Dean Norris had that shit-eating grin that he gives. It's so funny.
Well, yeah, and he pulled them over, which we haven't talked about yet, but because the horn fucks up.
We did talk about how the car continuously breaks down, but each time, at first it's the clutch. No, the first thing is the door.
Yeah. Wait, the door?
Never mind. Sorry. The door is the last thing. The first thing is the clutch because Toni Collette wants to drive and they both kind of fuck it up.
Yeah.
And then it's the horn.
Yeah.
And then the final thing, when they arrive at the beauty pageant, Steve Carell opens the door, just fucking falls out.
Yeah, and then he doesn't even question. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to keep going for they just ignore the door.
His little run that he does, too, where his hands are flat, and he's just like, it's like, I love that shit, because Steve Carell was like, how would Frank run?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I heard, this is a separate thing, but I heard they were apprehensive to cast Steve Carell. I guess they were originally pushing for Bill Murray to do this.
He would be too old for it.
Yeah, well, I don't know how old he was. This is like, 15 years ago or something like that, to be fair. He would have still been old, but yeah, he was significantly older than Steve Carell.
He would look older. Yeah.
But, and then I forgot who else they were considering for it. But with that being said, they were hesitant because at the time Steve Carell wasn't as big as he is now. He was in The Office and he was in Anchorman. But he was a side character in Anchorman.
And he wasn't known for his like dramatic parts.
Exactly. But I guess once they met with him and talked with him about it, they like were, oh no, we need him because he was like he understood it tonally and did the character work.
He's one of our great talents, man. He's
so good. That guy is so talented. And yeah, he's perfect for the role in this one. I look at Steve Carell and I do not see Michael Scott in this movie.
Yeah,
he like the way he performs and his beard and everything. He just looks like a different person.
But that's the thing about Steve Carell. Whenever he does show up in other projects, I never see Michael Scott.
Yeah,
which is really impressive
because it's such an iconic character.
Yeah, and so I'm never like, oh, that's very Michael. I'm never like that.
Yeah,
because he's a really good performer. His best performance is 40-year-old version. I mean, like that. I love this movie.
Sandbags.
I love this movie. I really do. And I think this is an amazing performance. But the stuff that he does in 40-year-old version, I'm like, who is that guy? Like, you know what I mean? Anyways.
Yeah, fair enough.
We should do that on the podcast sometime. 40-year-old version.
Cover 40-year-old
great
version.
movie to talk about.
Sure, fair enough.
That movie holds up so well as a comedy. Like, it's such a great Judd Apatow project.
The movie's hilarious, yeah.
Anyways, okay. So they get the body out of the hospital. But a little bit before that, Olive picks up these eye tests. Just for fun, they start doing it in the car. And Dwayne finds out he's colorblind and just has a full-blown freak out in the car.
Yeah.
They pull over, and Paul Dano, an hour and 15 minutes or so into the movie, says his first word, which is just a fuck really loudly.
Yeah, he screams at the top of his lungs.
It's one of those things, though, when you're watching the movie, you're like, okay, this guy's going to speak in the movie, and the first thing that he says is probably going to be very important.
Yeah.
Or it's just going to be brushed off as like it didn't really mean much, or I don't know. But I assumed it was going to be important.
It's a typical trope, for sure, of like, the character who doesn't speak, speaks and they have a big impact.
Clerk.
They make fun of that. They make fun of that on Chasing Amy, finally, when Kevin Smith.
Yeah, but also in Clerk.
The Clerks, the same character. That's what I'm talking about, Jay and Silent Bob.
Sorry.
It's Chasing Amy, the same characters.
Sorry.
Like, literally, I think Kevin Smith's character says, like, oh, you're chasing Amy. And like, wait, what? What'd you say? And then Jay literally says, Silent Bob thinks it's because he don't talk a whole lot. The minute he does talk, it's going to have this big impact. Like, Jay just roasts him for it. It's like, oh, you think because you're talking now? It's like all important.
Yeah. Doesn't he say like, fuck you, man? You never asked me anything.
Yeah, he's like, did you even know I wanted to dance at one point? Or something like that. He's like, you don't never fucking ask me.
Yeah. I forgot about that. I haven't seen Chasing Amy.
Yeah, you've just seen that scene, right, that I've showed you or something?
You showed me that scene. Is Chasing Amy good?
I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember liking it. It deals with pretty progressive and mature themes more than,
Which is
than
not
you would expect.
Something that I would expect from Kevin Smith.
Yeah, but because the concept of it, right?
Yeah.
It deals a lot with like kind of like overall the tone is like the less you know about your partner, the better, and that's okay. You're in their past because it's not like what they're looking for now doesn't reflect who they were. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. It's who's it starring?
Ben Affleck.
Right.
I always forget his name. My Name is Earl guy. Jason Clarke, is that his name or something like that?
Okay, yeah.
Is that his name? Jason Lee. That's what it is.
Jason Lee. So not close at all.
I apologize. I got Jason.
I'm totally kidding. Like,
but yeah.
So Paul Dano just yells fuck and shot really beautifully, that scene. You pointed that out.
Yeah, that wide shot when you see the skyline behind them and the family so small.
You know where the horizon is?
It's in the upper.
It's at the top.
At the top, yeah.
You know why? Because it's interesting. Fableman's.
Fableman stands. You know this.
You know what I'm talking about.
But
if it's at the bottom, it's interesting. If it's at the middle, it's fucking boring. Top tier scene. Anyways, lovely scene. Lovely is probably not the right word because it's like
it's a heartbreaking scene.
It's a heartbreaking scene, but the way it ends is very lovely.
It's a perfectly executed scene, and
yes,
just the idea. Well, it dismantles so much of what Greg Kinnear's character is saying of like the idea of he doesn't say it, but basically manifestation. If you want it bad enough and you go towards it, never give up, you're gonna get that thing.
Sometimes you're dealt a rough hand,
and literally, like Dwayne was silent. He vowed silence for what, like 8 months?
And Richard commended that in the beginning. He's like, I actually think it's impressive.
Exactly. He wanted to achieve his goal probably more than anyone else wanted to achieve their goals.
He was pot committed.
So committed. And then just through something as stupid as colorblindness. Yeah. Not stupid, but you know what I'm saying? Something as
something as stupid as colorblindness.
Yeah, that's so insignificant in comparison to how hard he's been working.
It's not like a physical injury. It's not like an intellect thing. It's colorblind. It's the smallest thing that is going to basically...
It shattered his dreams. Yeah. Exactly. It destroyed them. And so, no wonder he goes out and screams at the top of his lungs.
And curses out his family.
Yeah, exactly. And he expresses... And the only one he doesn't insult is his sister.
And then you have that scene where he curses out the family. Toni Collette walks up like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. Richard's trying to be calm and... figuring it out is like, we still gotta make it to this thing.
Yeah.
Which I'm on his side. I'm like, you still gotta make it a 3.
Yeah.
And then Olive just slowly walks down in her cowboy boots.
Oh my god.
And you know the way she walks down where she's trying not to fall?
Yeah.
Because it's a big hill. And I wonder how much location scouting happened to find that location because it's so beautiful.
To get the right scene, yeah.
But she goes down and she just, gives her big brother a little hug.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay.
Yeah, he's like, all right.
He's like, okay, let's go. It's the way I love it.
It's so sweet.
And it's my favorite moment is just when she's trying to walk back up and Paul Dano kind of as holding her in the back and then he just lifts her.
He just picks her up. It's such big brother energy.
And then Abigail Breslin just has that little smile.
I know. It's adorable. And but it's so true though that in times of hardship or whatever, you can't like. This is just universal. There are sometimes you can't say the right words or string the perfect sentence together to make someone feel better. Just being present, sometimes all people need. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's such a purity of like a sibling relationship having that for each other.
I mean, another great movie that did that is also Inside Out, like very overtly.
Yeah.
When Bing Bong was really upset, Joy's still trying to be like, come on, look on the brighter side. Doesn't work. And then sadness comes in, and for the first time you see her use, where she just sits down and is like, that sucks.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. Anyways.
And it's like, I feel better now. Okay.
Sometimes you just need that presence of acknowledgement and understanding. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a great Paul Dano moment too, because that guy's like one of our great freak out actors.
Yeah, I know, right? That guy can fucking yell.
I love him for it though. I mean, like, you need those actors. You need those actors that can just come in and be like, I'm gonna scream and it's gonna be entertaining. It's not as simple as that. He's also like just a fantastic actor, but he does ironically just have like not ironically, he does coincidentally have a lot of freak out moments in movies.
Yeah.
The Batman, I love the Batman. I love his performance of the Batman. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, the Batman, he's great in. I haven't seen There Will Be Blood, but everyone says he's amazing in that movie too.
God, yeah, it's phenomenal.
Well, and also, you haven't seen 12 Years a Slave, but he's in that movie too. Mm-hmm. He does have a couple screechy, yelling scenes in that one too that he's great in.
Yeah, sure, he's a white guy in 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like a slimy, like assistant on a plantation, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So he doesn't like own. He's not like one of those high up people, but he's like kind of a side guy that's like in the field.
Okay.
And stuff.
Okay, cool.
And so he gets mad at certain people, whatever. I won't spoil it. I'm trying not to spoil it, but he has some good scenes.
And then, man, we're just off to the races. Getting to the pageant is probably the most stressful thing ever, of like driving by like the resort and just be like, Dad, you're passing it. Turn around. It's like, it's a one-way road.
I can't turn around. And he literally can't even stop the car, and they just crash through like little fences.
Like we already discussed, Frank just fucking gets out, runs. Doesn't wait for anyone. He's like, okay, I'll just get them at the front. It's so good.
I know. And even then, they're still late and barely make it.
Man, this is where I'm just looking at Greg Kinnear this entire, like, this is his, like, all-star moment in this movie. He's so good at these moments, he's good in this entire movie, but...
He's particularly great in this scene.
Because you're kind of seeing the pageant through his eyes. In a funny enough.
Sure.
Because the whole movie is like, you just gotta be a winner. You gotta beat them. You gotta get in there. You gotta like really believe in yourself and work hard. And he kind of just through his eyes, like he starts noticing how fucking strange this entire thing is. Yeah. Like the amount of times he'll just cut back to him being like, huh.
Yeah.
All right, that little girl is wearing a bikini. That's weird. Cool.
Yeah, I know.
They're fully in makeup. What a weird thing that's happening. This host is just the strangest man I've ever seen.
He's the guy in the tuxedo.
He is so. I think his name is he's Stan Winston's. No, not Stan Winston. That's the special effects guy. Something Winston, but phenomenal in the movie. The way he just says America.
Oh yeah, when he's singing to all of them.
Majesty. Like it's just so gross and funny.
It's so
But yeah, he like gets in there. The lady's like, "You're 4 minutes late," and he just like gets on his knees.
Yeah.
Like fuck pride, fuck everything. It took us so long to get here.
He puts his family first and just wants to get his daughter into this.
Yeah, and this is where the movie kind of flips a little bit, where like now. Most of the family, aside from Toni Collette, is like, Olive, don't do this. Like,
yeah. I know the way. I know Dwayne's like, this place is fucked.
Yeah, and like, Toni Collette's like, oh my god, like what's wrong? Like, come on, we just gotta let her be Olive.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, it's because like they're seeing like everyone come out and be these kids that are being over sexualized. Mm-hmm. And Olive comes out with her top hat and her tie. It's so great. And you think it's going to be very wholesome. But
yeah, exactly.
But, I'm kind of rushing ahead. I do want to mention two scenes that really were like just really important to me. One is the obvious Frank and Dwayne scene.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite scene in the movie.
It's pretty iconic. Like that, I feel like that scene gets referenced a lot.
Well, and there's also like the fact that they... talk about Marcel Proust you know? Which
Yeah.
I don't know anything about him. I'm not a big, English literature. Actually, he was a French writer.
He
But
spent half his life writing something that nobody reads, even though he's the best writer since like Shakespeare.
exactly, but what was it? There are like philosophy essays about Little Miss Sunshine, interestingly enough, because of the references to, Friedrich Nietzsche and Proust, and how like in a way how the characters reflect nihilism as like not a bad thing either, that it can also free you from like societal standards and realizing that happiness is actually very subjective.
Yeah.
That like, yeah, like you said, we all suffer together. That's what life is, like, and the way they interact with each other, Frank and Dwayne, how they're both like, oh, we're fucking losers and it's cool, like they feel like they get each other on such a even level.
But they grew into that. Like in the beginning, like, I mean, one of Frank's first lines is when Cheryl is just like, I'm so glad you're here. And he's just like, that makes one of us.
Oh, yeah. No, totally.
And how he's just like, I tried to kill myself and I failed at that too.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes him the whole movie to be like, I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah. And Dwayne summarizes it perfectly when he says, like, fuck beauty pageants. Life is one fucking beauty pageant after another.
Yeah.
If I want to fly, I'll find a way to fly.
And do what you love and fuck everything else.
Yeah.
And then, but before that, where Dwayne's just like, I wish I could just sleep until I'm 18.
Yeah.
And he starts talking about how that writer and just a lot of people in life come up, like, look back at their worst and struggling moments as some of their best moments, because that's where they learned stuff and grew. And how he says, if you sleep until you're 18, think of all the suffering you'll miss. Yeah. I mean, high school, that's prime suffering.
You can't get much better suffering than that.
Yeah.
But it's so true, though. Like, our formative years are the struggles that we go through, and like that. That's what I love, how this movie pushes back on the whole, like, the thing I hate most is losers that Arnold Schwarzenegger said. I love Arnold, but, I just love what this movie does to counteract that, too.
Yeah.
I'm not just trying to shit on Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love that guy.
But I know what you're trying to say.
But the fact that it makes such a point to say that, like, failure is so important, too, in a weird way, to really achieve things in life, to really have a deeper understanding.
Yeah. Hell yeah. It's easier said than done, obviously, because when you're in the thick of it, that's all you can see and you just want to get out.
Yeah.
And that's completely natural. People shouldn't just be like, you should be happy while you're failing.
100%.
You shouldn't run away from it. Because it goes back to what the grandpa said. It's just like the real losers are the ones who don't even try.
That's exactly the point I'm making, is that, like, life is more about things that you can control in a weird way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's like the grandpa's soul and like what he believed in was kind of there in that last 30 minutes.
His ashes were spread in the third act, basically.
Perfect way to say it. That's a perfect way to describe it. Like the inappropriateness and also the mental clarity.
yeah, exactly. Both of those things combined.
So getting to that, I love how when Frank and Dwayne return, they go inside the beauty pageant and seconds they come out, they're like, all right, I'm going backstage. They're so traumatized.
Yeah, like, this is ridiculous.
And then Olive has that superhero moment where she's just like, glasses off, top hat on, let's go. And then she's walking with the whoever, like the worker there, and then it does this like horror whip pan to the family, just being like, "Good luck, honey."
I know, it's like an A24 movie. It
looks like a horror movie. The way they just like
it was very like Kubrick, like it was very shiny.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. I was thinking of like it reminded me of someone. It very reminded me of Kubrick. They all get in and. I'd like to dedicate this to my grandpa, who showed me these moves.
And where is he now?
In the trunk of our car.
It's such a great punchline.
It's the way she says it, too.
Yeah, because obviously it's queued up to say in heaven or something like that.
Yeah, and she just starts dancing to Super Freak.
Yeah, and one of the greatest things.
The hardest laugh is when she just like starts to patting her butt. And, and the camera does this like swivel shot.
Well, I think what's so funny about that whole sequence is
how freaked out the audience is.
Well, yeah, the judges are horrified that she's doing such an overtly graphic adult dance.
When all she's doing is being overt, where all these other girls are kind of been doing the same thing.
They're all caked in makeup and are clearly meant to resemble adults.
Well, that one girl,
spray tanning.
Oh my god, that one shot where she's
it's
rotating
like
her legs.
nasty.
Well, one of those girls, remember, like in the beginning where they're all introducing themselves?
Yeah.
And remember one of those girls, she's like in a two-piece?
Yeah.
And she kind of turns around and everyone's like, ooh. And it cut back to like Richard being like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, she did that, and then we were like, wow, good job. I want to mention real quick, because this scene was really important, because I said 2 scenes, remember? Mm-hmm. Her asking Miss California if she likes ice cream is heartbreaking. It's heartwarming when she replies like, yeah, I do.
Oh, I know.
And it's just like the smile that Olive has. And she's like, she likes ice cream. It's like, I heard.
I know. It's like, finally getting some W's. You know?
I also like when it cuts like back to the judges as they're horrified of Olive dancing. Miss California's kind of liking it. She's like, ooh.
Oh, yeah, I know. I love how Miss California is like the most grounded one in the panel.
Yeah, like she gets it. It is an amazing moment when the host is trying to usher off Olive, and Richard's like, don't touch her! Get your hands off my daughter!
Well, it's a father protecting a daughter.
That's what touches me.
That's the difference.
And then it goes into this handheld shot right behind Richard as he's following him,
just
going up.
walking it over to him.
Dude, I'm not kidding. When I was watching it, my hands were clenched. Like I was gonna punch the guy.
I know, and just meanwhile you can just hear the music. The girl's a super freak in the background.
And I like how Olive's like, what do I do? And he's like, keep dancing, honey.
It's okay, don't worry.
And I do like how she's just like...
Well, yeah, leading up to it, when the judge is like, what is your daughter doing? And he's like...
Kicking ass.
Yeah, she's kicking ass. You know, it's so good. Like, that's, like, you can feel that he's, like, just appreciating his daughter for even fucking trying.
Yeah.
You know?
He just look at that. Again, that host is so good.
Yeah. Well, you haven't seen Donnie Darko, huh?
No, don't spoil it.
I won't spoil it. She's in that movie, though. And
Abigail Breslin.
Oh, no, the judge.
Oh, the main judge that also...
Yeah, with the big hair, you know, that, yeah.
Oh, cool,
The not nice one.
I'm kind of leading up to it, but you want to talk about the main Richard moment?
I mean...
Because it happens now.
It's one of the most satisfying things ever, and you know what? You left a comment on the dance scene on YouTube, on your personal YouTube channel.
Did I?
That. Yeah.
How long ago?
Like 2 or 3 years ago.
So like a clip of the dancing on YouTube.
Yeah, if you look it up of like the popular clip on Little Miss Sunshine,
okay,
you left a comment on there that has like 500 likes or something like that. That's like an actual like kind of top comment.
Let me find it and I'll read it out because I don't remember this at all.
But it's because what your comment was is like what I'm pretty sure you still feel to this day and what I still feel too.
I mean, we've talked about it endlessly, and we're eventually going to say what shot we're talking about.
Yeah. Just type in Little Miss Sunshine dance scene.
Okay, cool. There you go. All right, so I found it right here. It's...
Actually, it's almost 1,000 likes.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, so this was 2 years ago. I totally forgot I commented this. But I said, the dad moving his elbows is one of the most satisfying cinematic moments ever. Yeah.
It's so true, though, because, like...
Yeah.
Because, like, the way he's kind of standing there and, like, he's being forced to... It's like he's faced with the choice of either, do I save Olive, what do you even call it, and take her off stage and get her out of here?
Yeah.
You know, or just do what they say and, you know, basically take her dreams away in a way. Or
I dance.
He just fucking goes for it and he starts dancing.
And it's like, it's so satisfying because it's just, bam, that's character growth.
Yeah.
You got there, buddy. And you're like, as an audience member, you're like, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God you got there for your daughter. You showed up.
I know, in a weird way, it kind of makes you want to cry a little bit. You know?
Dude, it gives me goosebumps, man.
I know. And Frank's just running in and joining them. And then Paul Dano making his stance.
Oh, yeah. His stance is my favorite. Yeah. And then the cut back to Toni Collette just laughing, being like, that's my family. They're doing it.
And she runs up and dances with him. And then, like, I love the small attention to detail where, like, they all do a small circle. Remember how they start spinning in a circle and Paul Dano standing in the middle jumping up and down?
Yeah.
It's like great that it happened to his character because his character was the one who openly disliked his family.
And now he's like with them.
He's like in the middle of them just embracing and having fun.
He's literally in the middle of it.
Exactly.
That's true. It's just, it's so nice. And it's so like, that's what I mean by like, you can feel Alan Arkin's character there.
Oh, yeah. He's 100% there in spirit and is, like, proud of them.
Yeah.
And is, like, just like, oh, man, that went better than I could have imagined, basically. He's like, that was so much
You
better.
know, he would have, like, I just imagine, like, what he would have done to that host. Like, I can only imagine. But that's what, like, Richard was doing. He was being his dad.
Yeah.
He was being what his dad believed.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And then it just slam cuts to them all, like, waiting outside the police office.
It's like, all right, you guys are good, but on the grounds that you can never enter your daughter into a pageant in the state of California again.
I think we can live with that, Frank.
Yeah.
But it's such a great shot, too. It's like a Verizon bar.
Yeah.
Like, all from tallest.
Oh, yeah, from like, right to left.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's so... And then a shot that like didn't make me cry, but it got me a little bit like misty eyed.
Yeah.
Is he's like, all right, everyone, load up, let's go, and they open the trunk and they all look at the cloth.
Yeah. It's like it's a good visual symbol for Grandpa.
It's kind of just like it for me. The way I saw it was just like, man, it's because of you. Mm-hmm. Like, it's because of you and your crazy antics and what you believed in is why we're all here.
Yeah.
Like,
they're all united, too.
We all wrote you off as a drug addict vet who just said whatever he wanted, but goddamn, like if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, it gets me, like, right now as I'm talking about it. But then the way he, like, rolls it up and he's just like, Grandpa would have been so proud of you.
So you did amazing. And she's like, thank you.
Yeah,
it's just like a sweet little girl.
And then the last push of the car getting in.
Yeah.
And you just see, I love how you hear the horn as they're driving off. Oh, no, the last thing, they push through the gates, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And, like, the lady judge is trying to get her parking validated. She's still there.
Just ripping right through.
Imagine that resort just being like, yeah, so there was this one year where this crazy Volkswagen yellow bus came on. This family was insane. They almost got arrested.
Oh, it's iconic. And yeah, like I said in the beginning of this, that like my family laughed so hard during that final dance scene.
I wish I saw it in theaters because I can only imagine how that played. If
Seeing
you don't know what's coming.
Exactly, yeah.
It's such a great surprise. And like, especially when she like starts like ripping off her pants.
Oh my god, I know. And Craig Kinnear's like, no. Like, I just love the small like I just love that they didn't know what the dance was. Like, they had no idea what the routine was. They just trusted Grandpa would, like, have this under control.
Yeah, it's just like, why'd you let Grandpa decide those moves? Like,
well, the script, too, reading the script, it does, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but the script heavily suggests that he basically, like, just based the dances off of his experience at strip clubs. That, like, he like, that's what his idea of dancing is.
But he takes it so seriously, you're going to need a bit more rehearsing. And then, like, you see some moments of it where she's like, all right, like, do that.
Practicing the growl.
Like, what is this dance?
Yeah, that's great.
You know, this time around, I think the Greg Kinnear stuff, like the Richard stuff, really got me.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can watch this at different stages of your life and you can maybe connect in a different way. But I do think the reason I got so teary-eyed is, like, watching Richard have his character growth.
Yeah.
It's like, man, when life gives you a shitty hand, you'll do anything to make yourself believe that you can get out of it. And part of Richard's way was like making himself believe that luck doesn't exist. I can just work really hard. Yeah. So it's like, you know, like you feel for him because, you know, that's just what happened to him and that's how he dealt with it. And then he had to learn that there's other ways to deal with it.
Yeah. And
it's accepting who you are.
It's accepting who you are and also still accepting that you tried. You know,
giving yourself that credit.
And giving yourself that credit that you tried, and that doesn't mean like, you know, I think I read like a review. I don't know who said it, but it was saying like this is a movie that kind of shows that the human experience is so compartmentalized by society. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? By like, you know, things like beauty pageants and the success of your book. You know what I mean? Everyone has their thing going to, you know, Flight Academy, all these things. Yeah. You know, that like. That make you feel like, oh, I'm living a fulfilling life, when really it's not about that.
Getting a certain amount of subscribers on YouTube.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When really it's like, no, life's not just that, a list of just little milestones that you get. Again, like Dwayne said, one beauty pageant after another. You know what I mean? It's the relationships you have with the people that are there for you through your struggles.
Yeah.
You know? And because you can achieve a bunch of things. I mean, like, look at fucking Frank. He was a fucking scholar. He was a really intelligent person, like, who had
number one in his field.
And that did not make him any happier after he lost all of it, you know?
Yeah. It's something that'll stick with you, you know. It was nice too, you know, to be frank with you. I'm a crier in movies. Mm-hmm. But recently, I don't know what's been happening. Like, I haven't been feeling that, and I've been self-conscious of it too. I'm just like, why haven't I cried in watching a movie in a while? It's like, why hasn't that happened? Like, do movies don't affect me anymore, or like
you're getting colder,
or is it just like because I do this as a job?
Sure.
Like, am I just looking at things like a job now? Like, movies are my job, and it kind of scares me because this is like I love watching movies on my own. I go to movie theaters by myself. I like collect. I'm a big Criterion Collection person, and watching this movie was really nice because I was like, oh no, I can still feel things when I watch like a movie that makes me feel things,
Yeah.
And it was very nice that this movie still had that for me. I mean, it's one of those movies that makes you like kind of think about your own life a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I like that it still has that effect. It hasn't lost that for me.
Yeah.
Like, I can still put this movie on and be like, okay, well, I think I should reevaluate some things on my own, and I think that's completely okay. Like, after I watched this movie today, I was like, man, okay, I need to give myself a little bit more slack, There's a lot of things that I give myself shit for because I'm not doing this enough, I'm not doing this enough, I haven't reached this goal, and and it's easy to get into that, but this was a very nice experience.
That's good, man. Yeah, overall, Little Miss Sunshine, one of my favorite movies. It was an honor to talk about this movie with you, because, like I said, this movie just hits me in a lot of different ways. And I'm glad it hit you too, which is really awesome.
I feel like in a very different way. It was a very new experience watching it this time.
Yeah, it kind of, watching it as an adult, it hits very different.
And like, for the listeners and viewers, like, if you haven't seen this movie in a while, and you might like it, but you might have not seen it in a while, give it another watch. I think it's on HBO Max right now.
Yeah, at the time of recording this and probably posting, it's on HBO Max.
But yeah, check it out, because you're really gonna it's gonna be a great reminder of how good this movie is.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay, well, that's it for today's. What the fuck was that?
Can we keep that?
That's it for today's show. Come back tomorrow. I'll be talking about Jurassic Park by myself. Dude,
you always do the wrap-ups, man, so you got to give yourself more credit. You always do the wrap-ups. You always do the thanks for watching, stay nice, dudes. Can I do it this time?
Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you guys very much for watching. And is there anything else I said? Thanks for...
Stay nice, dudes.